I can kick it off. My name is Braley Keller. I'm a native of Lincoln, Nebraska, which is also the location of the headquarters for Opendorse, so not too far away. I went to undergrad at Nebraska Wesleyan University, where I competed in football and I swam, and I got involved in the Student Athlete Advisory Committee while I was there, and served at the campus level, in the conference, and at the national level. And it was really through that experience that I started to get a passion for working in the collegiate athletic space. And with Opendorse being in town, I had the help of a good friend, Tucker McHugh, to apply and get familiar with the whole company. And since then, it's been about two and a half years of being an intern here with Opendorse. I'm on the operations team, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, my name is Tucker McHugh. I'm from Malcolm, Nebraska, which is like 15 minutes northwest of Lincoln. So similar to Braley in a lot of parts of my story. Very familiar with Lincoln and Nebraska and the Huskers, and came to Nebraska Wesleyan University, and I played baseball during my 4 years there. And I was on that same student athlete advisory committee just for my senior year. And Braley was the president of that. So I got to see him in action and experience him and his talents go to work there. And I was interning at Opendorse my junior year. I was saying, we got to get this guy involved at the Opendorse. Kind of mentioned it to him, but I mean, he definitely would have found his way there, I believe, without me, but excited that we get the chance to work together. But right now we're on the operations team together, and I serve as the activation coordinator. So I facilitate a lot of the different things that go on with our sponsored campaigns, from our athlete lists to actually carrying out the campaign, to doing some reporting on those campaigns to see kind of how successful they were.
All right, so I'm not from Nebraska. I'm born and raised in California. My name is Chris Coots. I'm the Ready Program Director here with Opendorse. Arrived at Opendorse after a decade working in college athletics and in minor league baseball. As I said, I was born and raised in California, grew up in the Fresno, California area with Central Valley. Went to school, undergrad in San Diego. So I've gone from the San Diego of California to the San Diego of Nebraska in Lincoln, here at Opendorse. In my role, I oversee the education around name, image, likeness with student athletes, with coaches, administrators that are Ready partners. So there's about 25 plus now who work directly with us around this whole what is to come with NIL. Previously, before Opendorse, I worked at Kansas State for 6 years. I worked at University of San Diego for nearly 2 years. Both of those are my alma maters. I did my graduate degree at Kansas State. But I started my career in minor league baseball working with Fresno Grizzlies. All my roles were around communications, social media, creative services, a little bit of marketing. And the point of that is I basically understood how this all works from the team side, but saw the power of the athlete model and the athlete-driven model. And that's what drew me to Opendorse, is play a big role in sharing that information that this company has gained over 10 years working in the pro space and college space, to be able to give that same knowledge and power to unlock the creators and athletes today.
Great, that's a good segue. Let's, I think, jump right in, and it seems to go well, Chris, what you do, the Ready program. So, there's tons of buzz around NIL right now. So just what is, maybe help us separate fact from fiction, and how does Opendorse fit in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, name, image, likeness, NIL is nothing new to sports. It's only new to college sports. It's only new to D1, D2, D3, all these different levels, because pro athletes have been doing endorsement opportunities, the same stuff that Tuck and Braley all assist with. That stuff has been occurring forever. And now the opportunity lays in front of the NCAA to institute rules and legislation that allow their athletes to take part in the NIL ecosystem at their level, right? They all have this ability to be influencers or endorse products on their campuses and their hometowns, whatever it may be. So that is NIL. It's basically the athlete owns their name, image, likeness, and if someone were to use it, they get compensated for it. Simple as that. When it comes to what Opendorse does, is we have built this knowledge, nearly a decade working with pro athletes and finding deals, and partnering brands with them and eventually getting dollars into their pockets to basically leverage their social media profiles and do opportunities. And so we know what that looks like. And so we want to take that and give it to the student athletes and say, hey, this is what's to come. And this is the playbook on how to set yourself up for it before it even arrives. Because branding is not something that happens overnight. And opportunities don't just show up on your doorstep on July 1 or August 1 or whatever the rules allow it for it to be taking place in the NCAA level. There's a process to it. And so the Ready program is like preparing those athletes for that moment, right? The process is probably a year at least for an athlete. And so we want to be able to help them understand how to use social media as a tool to think about it in an effective way, to be efficient with their time, not take away from being a student, not take away from being an athlete, carving out that time to build their brand. So when companies and brands are looking for athletes or partners to kind of partner with on their social media profiles, the work's already been done, and they can just partner up and they know what they have already established. So we want to make sure athletes see that now. And so whenever the rules do put in place, they are already started their own personal process, and we'll walk through that later and what that looks like. But we just know what it looks like because NIL is not new to us. We believe we can help athletes position themselves for success.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have been putting great information out, and I became aware of the company because after I interviewed Braley last summer, and I think one thing that's caught my attention recently, you mentioned like the July 1st, the August 1st dates, has been the state by state legislation that's been rolling out, and it seems like everyone's kind of got a different way of doing it. Everyone's approaching it differently. But I think your point about just trying to help athletes prepare, because it is coming. But maybe could one of you guys talk about the status of the legislation and specifically how that's going to play out for D3 schools?
Yeah, absolutely. I can hop in. And would you like me to share my screen, or is this going to be a no screen share?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, host disabled it. We're going to need your help.
All right, let's see here. Try it now.
Sweet. Okay, so yes, you are exactly right. July 1, August 1, maybe even before July 1, there's a lot of buzz around where the states are in particular, because in January, the NCAA was receiving pressure from the Department of Justice with concerns around antitrust violation. So the NCAA, with the advice of the Board of Governors, President Emmert, each division decided to withdraw their proposals. And now, 5 months later, this is where we're at with a patchwork of state laws. We see all around the country. We have a variety of states that are proposing legislation, some that have enacted legislation. We're at the count of 18 different states right now who have enacted legislation, and a lot of the states follow a similar trend, right? Schools and conferences and associations can't limit student athletes from being compensated. They can't prevent student athletes from having professional representation. NIL agreements can't conflict with team contracts. So there is a general trend with what the states are doing right now. But unfortunately, not all of the 18 states have enacted the same exact legislation. And that goes against the NCAA's model for creating a level playing field for their student athletes. So I want to show you this article and make it aware to be a resource, because each state, while those that have passed have unique provisions, even those that are in the hopper right now in terms of Louisiana, Missouri, Texas, they are all unique in their own way as well. So I want to make this a resource, but
we'll definitely include that. When we upload this to YouTube, just drop it in the notes so people can access that, and we'll share it on Twitter as well.
Absolutely. And something to add on that too, in terms of what it means for Division III. Right now, we've seen, we've seen over 30% of all Division III schools lie in states that have enacted NIL legislation. So 30% of Division III schools are currently in a state that's being impacted by NIL legislation. So if that's not enough convincing in terms of what this means for Division III, I'll dive into LSDBI. So this proposal that was tabled, and if the NCAA were to act in the coming months before the 2021-2022 academic year, it would likely be through a similar proposal. And what this means for the school's perspective is that their involvement contains the ability for them to provide institutional policies for their student athletes. So the institution, especially at a Division III level, is creating an experience very similar to the general student body. And with that, policies need to be set forth for these student athletes to understand that they cannot use institutional marks in ways that are different from the general student body. The institution also may provide educational opportunities, but again, not different than any education that could be provided to the general student body. And we'll dive into that later, again, in regards to what that could mean for coursework opportunities, and how institutions can really position themselves best to help their student athletes really engage with everything that Chris just spoke about.
Yeah. So it's coming up. Chris mentioned people should start preparing, but I guess a big question that I've been receiving from, D3 student athletes and high school recruits and people who are trying to make this decision of, do I go D3? Am I losing out on potential NIL benefits if I'm at a smaller school? Like, try to answer that question. What does a D3 athlete have as potential avenues for, to take advantage of NIL coming forward?
Yeah, absolutely. This one's really fun to think about when Braley and I were playing, and to think about the different things we would have done or tried to do had this taken effect while we were there. But I think that's probably the most common skepticism, is a lot of people think that this will only benefit the star quarterback or the star volleyball player. And really, everyone has opportunity. It'll be a free market. So, the more exposure you have, naturally, probably the more opportunities you're going to get. But at the same time, there are all kinds of avenues and all kinds of companies and brands who want to utilize your network to put their brand in front of your audience. So at the Division III level, Nebraska Wesleyan is kind of a great example, because we're 5 minutes down the road are the Nebraska Cornhuskers, who are this huge ultimate brand. So what can Nebraska Wesleyan student athletes do? It could be the local businesses right around University Place. Student athletes could monetize their social media channels in the same way. We've done Twitch streams. There's TikTok videos. All athletes come from somewhere. So I'm from Malcolm, Nebraska. It's a town of maybe 400 people, and they've done great in supporting me. But I could have gone home in the summertime and hosted a camp, and kids could pay, whatever it would have been to take a summer camp with me, and we'll play some baseball and have some fun. But there's lots of things out there that could be done, and there's some creative things that I'm sure haven't been come up with yet.
Right. I guess if just moving to downstream impacts, if a student athlete does take advantage of, some kind of NIL deal, we'll call it an endorsement, based on who they are as a student athlete, how will that impact financial aid, or do those things operate in separate channels?
Yeah, I'll speak to that, because I think it's important for athletes to at least understand NIL activities will be a source of income, right? And so I'm not saying they'll be able to pay for their entire tuition with NIL activities. They might be able to pay for rent. They might be able to pay for some equipment, whatever it may be, but that is still considered income. And when it comes to financial aid, that is impacting that number that is calculated in how much financial aid they receive. So athletes have to consider that before they do this whole pursuit of NIL activities, right? They can't say, they go in like, I'm getting a Pell Grant or I'm getting X amount of financial aid and will never be impacted by the $1,000 I make from NIL activities, or $5,000 or $10,000. Like, that has to be factored in that equation. So when we talk about what athletes can be doing now, it starts with one, building out that plan, setting some goals, understanding what makes you different or separate yourself from your peers or people that are also be considered for these opportunities. Outline your personal plan, and then go into the next step of, okay, where does that fit into my bigger picture of my income, my financial aid? How does this impact my family's income? Because technically that's what's factored in there. So if they say, okay, I'm going to make couple $100s a month, and it's a couple thousand over the course of the year, and it doesn't negatively impact my financial aid too much, great, pursue it. Now if you feel like you're going to be making $10,000, $20,000, which is not impossible for a D3 athlete by any means, because your follower count is linked to your bank account, simply put. Just want to emphasize that. And so if you're making $10,000 to $20,000, that's clearly going to impact your financial aid. That's extra income. So if you think you're going to make that, anticipate that financial aid being impacted in any sort of way. You want to talk with your financial advisors, whoever's on campus, to help with that whole thing, and then you go. But just don't think it's never going to be affected. That's all I want to say there. And the next point is, I think the financial aid, the way it works is, it's a little delayed. So if you make $10,000 as a freshman because you just grew your Instagram following, before you arrived on campus, it may take a year or two to really impact your financial aid. So understand that as well. Like, what is the number, or whatever is that income from a certain year being brought into your equation? If you're a senior, right, you've already gone through your entire experience, you're not worried about financial aid for the next year, you're not worried about it affecting your income, maybe you feel like there's more opportunities to be had as a senior as opposed to a freshman, because you're not worried about that Pell Grant impact or that scholarship impact from the school based on need, not merit, right? Those things you just have to consider. So, as we say, like, don't just jump in, like, have a plan, understand the impact on your bottom line financially. And if it makes sense, you go forward, because this is an opt-in experience. You're not forced to do any of this at all.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And, so I guess side question, what would be someone, let's keep on the Nebraska Wesleyan example, because Braley and Tucker, you guys are very familiar with that. On campus, who would be the person you would go to as a resource, or how are D3 schools thinking about this and providing, an on-campus person that student athletes who come in with very little knowledge can go to and maybe help understand what the impacts are going to be?
Yeah, I can start, and then Tuck, if you want to chime in too. In terms of how it would look for a lot of what Chris is talking about, I think the general financial aid office, right, would be helpful in terms of navigating those impacts. But in terms of maybe spinning the question a bit towards entrepreneurial opportunities, I think your professors that you're closest to, and maybe even your coaches, depending on that relationship, could be helpful in terms of educating it and providing just some light in terms of the potential you've got. Right, there will be likely some legislation around institutional involvement, whether it's the NCAA or the states that move forward with this. But the involvement that I see right now with the current student body is shown greatly through an example of my old roommate, Jonathan Curdy. He was the quarterback for our team, and he entered into our campus's annual pitch contest, and he ended up winning the pitch contest and traveled abroad to Estonia and represented our school at an international level for his business related idea. And that was through the encouragement of our professor. And even though his idea wasn't necessarily around sports or even his own business model, I think it plays off of examples that we've seen in college sports already. To tap into my swimming background, there was a former swimmer from Princeton named Matthew Marquardt, and he teamed up with his brother to create this product for backstrokers to get a foothold off their start. It was a very niche product, but they used it specifically for swimming, and that's where they spent all their time, right? It was in the pool, and they were able to develop that, and you really tap into their entrepreneurial background. So having a professor in that area, whether that's your major or not, I think could be a resource. And maybe even outside of this, and Tuck, you can dive in too. There was a quarterback from Linfield a couple years back, a Division III school, and he's got over 150K on YouTube just creating videos about what it's like to be a Division III quarterback. So there's opportunities out there for sure. And I think, again, it goes back to the relationship with maybe staff or professors or friends that you've got around you to really help you realize that potential.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that Division III schools really have an advantage in, is like the number of professors to student or advisors to student, thinking about who would I have gone to, because I would want to know, as all athletes will want to know, how do I maximize my brand? How do I be most efficient with my time? Number one, how do I not break the rules and stay eligible? And I could have gone to our athletic director or our head of sports management or any of my advisors, and I know all of them would have been just as helpful. So I think as the legislation kind of develops, schools will kind of continue to create more clear-cut plans and policies and have kind of more official meetings. I think it'd be kind of similar to when the whole team has to go in the classroom before the year starts and we sign all of our paperwork on things like that. But in the meantime, I think that Division III schools really benefit from the attention that they can give each student.
If I can add one thing real quick about the D3 experience, because what Tuck just said, the campuses are a little more agile, right? They can pivot into different areas. I would fully expect some D3 universities to be creating NIL classes, right? Or NIL programs or NIL academies that are more campus centric, not just coming from the athletic department. Because what we're talking about is influencer marketing. That's a multi-billion-dollar spend by marketing groups this year and will be for several years and however long. And the model is only different because there's social media. So I would expect the conversation on D3 campuses to be more about what can we do as a whole campus and how do we set ourselves up to be kind of a differentiator in this space and educating athletes and educating general students about the influencer marketing and including the business curriculum. That is where I expect it to go. There's certainly going to be athletic department checks that you always do, as Tuck and Braley just alluded to earlier, but this is nothing different to anyone that's already on campus who is not an athlete. And so I think there's lots of potential for schools to build out that curriculum and make it more part of their business program.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like a natural evolution and something that's definitely, you see a lot of the larger Division I schools doing that. And I think at that level, there's been a conversation about the impacts that that'll have on recruiting. What do you guys see as the impact on Division III recruiting? And, will there be a similar buildup of and promotion of on-campus NIL opportunities? Is that something that you think recruits are really going to prioritize going forward?
And I could start here too and follow up, guys. But in terms of how it may impact recruiting, I think generally student athletes are going to go to the school that they think is most attractive. And usually for Division III student athletes, what goes into that attraction can be the major. A lot of times, first and foremost, because the Division III level would be extremely rare to go on to play professionally, not out of the question, but academics will be a priority at that level. So just like Chris mentioned, if it's built into the business program, kind of this NIL education arm, I think that could be attractive for prospective student athletes. And where I guess I'd land is I don't necessarily see it impacting recruiting monumentally, but I do see it fitting into current recruiting pitches, right? So hate to keep going back to Nebraska Wesleyan, but like Tuck mentioned, we're in Lincoln, so we're right with the University of Nebraska. It's a really just a big, small town. That's the best way to describe it. But we are a college town, and that's a lot. I guess that's a lot more than other schools in our conference could say if they're coming from a very small town, maybe a rural community. So maybe the pitch that Nebraska Wesleyan currently uses is you're in a big town, you can have a lot of opportunities for internships, you name it, right? Whereas the small town might mention, yeah, maybe we have a small town, but we have a strong community that supports the entire college. So you have this dynamic of opportunity versus support. And I think it goes the same way for NIL, right? Opportunities in a big city, you might have exposure, but there are more fish in the pond here at a larger metro area. But in the rural community, your NIL pitch, if you're going that route, could be very similar too, to say, yeah, you might have your own camp here in the summer, but you're going to bring every kid from the town because that's the one sporting event that the kids in the community are fixated on. So you really are the superstar in that small town. So really, that's where I see it playing into recruiting, is really just enhancing the current recruiting pitches.
Those are great points, and I think I kind of see kind of various sides of how it could kind of unfold with recruiting. Like the number one that Braley did a great job hitting on was like the direct exposure, the direct benefit of like why this college specifically you'll be able to build a great brand, or like location wise, or the people who live in this town, or things like that. But thinking about it and looking around, if I saw that a Division III school had some kind of a plan to help me build my brand, or had the resources that were going to be there to help me hopefully make some money while I was in school, but ultimately teach me those leadership skills and networking skills and develop a brand that sticks with me after I graduate. I would see that school, okay, those people, they are really going to care how people perceive me. And they're going to teach me to put my best foot forward and put what I want to be known for out into the world. And so that would just really be valuable for me, that, hopefully what I do during my time in college is going to stick with me for the right reasons long after I'm gone.
Understood. And so I think to tie this all together, I mean, we've touched on this on a couple different fronts. Chris talked about, maybe the legislation's not quite here yet, but you can start building up a following. Tucker mentioned, running a camp with your name as the brand. Braley mentioned small town partnerships, business promotion. What are concrete steps that the Division III student athlete, either current or one that's enrolling this fall, can take right now to make NIL work for them when it is a legal part of college athletics in the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna say the first thing you need to do is figure out what makes you stand out from the rest. Right? We'll phrase it as a positioning statement. That is no different than a company or a startup kind of identifying its tagline, its 5 to 7 word sentence that says, "We are this." Right? Opendorse, we help athletes maximize endorsement value. Right? We want that for athletes. We want to help every athlete. Right? Those are our positioning statements. That's what we do. Every athlete right now, no matter what level, again, D3 up to D1 to NAI, whatever it is, needs to figure out, if I'm going to start a career or start in NIL activities, what is my positioning statement? What makes me stand out from the rest? Because I want to go back to Tuck's point, like, this is, yes, some dollars to NIL activities, right? Is it a social media endorsement thing? Is it a personal sports clinic or camp that you run? Is it monetizing YouTube videos? Is it autograph signings? Like, all these NIL activities are great and they are financially motivating. But you're also positioning yourself for that career that you want to do, right? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a graphic designer? Do you want to be a professor or a teacher? Like, those are things you already should be thinking about. And so when you define what your future looks like today in NIL or in your career, you're already ahead of the pack. And so once you figure that out, okay, this is what my goal, my objective, this is what I'm really trying to do. Then you define the goals after that. Okay, here's why I know I'm meeting my marks. And just think about it as an athlete, right? If I step foot on campus and I'm not starting, but I want to be a starter by year 2, and I want to earn all league by year 3, and I want to earn all America by year 4, like, you got to measure that. And so the same thing goes with your brand. So after you define where you want to go, you define the 3 to 5 goals, the ways to measure your progress, and you start and you go. And usually it means like posting about the things that you're interested by on social media, because your social media accounts, your brand is your resume. You're basically telling people, this is how I want to be perceived. And I don't want to, that sounds really bad, but like, in the end, you're controlling that message. That's the whole point of the social media experience. And so if you share that with people, like, hey, I love, the field of medicine or graphic design or fashion or fitness, whatever it may be, and you just post content about that, that is making it known, hey, this is what I care about. And the next thing you know, a brand, because Tuck finds you when you're a pro athlete, I guess, not only a college athlete, but a brand is saying, hey, I want to find an athlete in Lincoln, Nebraska, or Western Oregon, or somewhere in Massachusetts, and I want to say, hey, I'm a startup company. I'm trying to find athletes in this market, and I want to pitch, an endorsement opportunity on their social media following because they have 5,000 followers, 3,000 followers, and boom, and then we basically say, okay, there's this athlete at this university. They're already posting about this content. It matches up, and so that's down the road. But if you don't do it today, then they're never going to find you. If I love video games and I never post about video games, I'm never, ever going to receive video game endorsement opportunities. You have to almost tweet it and speak it into existence. So that stuff occurs today. As I said, you start with your plan, you define your goals and objectives to be able to measure progress, and you just start sharing what you care about.
Yeah. And that's a pretty natural continuation of a message that we try to share a lot, which is just, your social media feeds need to clean them up during your recruiting process, and be aware that, most times it's going to be public information and coaches are evaluating you on that. But I think what you're sharing, Chris, is take that thinking a step further, and it's not just how you're being perceived in the recruiting process, but how you can shape your own narrative and promote your interests, and whether that's career or personal, and then just promote yourself to future employers, or if you want to go pro, or it seems cool takeaways there.
Yeah, what I'll add is you shape the narrative, but you still got to be authentic, right? You're not speaking like, hey, I don't play ever video games, but I want to earn video game money, so I'm going to tweet about video games. It clearly comes off wrong. So you have to be true to yourself. You have to be pretty authentic, because people will be able to see through that. I've seen lots of people on social media. I'm thinking wow, they seem like they're really knowledgeable, and then I meet them in person, whoa, that was a miss, right? And coaches and whoever's recruiting you are going to be able to see that eventually as well. So don't feel like you need to be someone else. You need to just be yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I could reinforce that too. It would be to kind of put what you care about out into the world. Chris had mentioned I know me and my friends know me, but not everybody knows that I love to go fishing, or I love to ride ATVs, or whatever your passion is. And you can kind of do exercises with yourself, or you can ask your friends, if you go to my Instagram channel, what are you going to see? And the first 3 things, or whatever it is, that's my brand, because that's what people who don't know me very closely, that could be all that they see.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one more thing, because this is a really passionate area. This is obviously what we teach and what we do. The followers you have during your time in high school, the followers you have in your time at university, they don't disappear, right? They follow you post athletic career. And so what we teach is your time at university is a window of opportunity. And what you should be doing as an athlete, again, no matter the level, is being able to take your personal influence, take your followers, and not hold them to only your athletic success or your athletic influence. What I mean by that is, if you look at your window of opportunity as your 4 to 6 years at university, and say you build your brand, and this is what you want to be known for, your personal influence goes like this, while your athletic career naturally goes like this, okay? They are no longer tied together. And so if you make sure you use the time appropriately, the people that follow you are either going to be encouraged by what you're endorsing, or more importantly, might be a lead to a job, or someone that helps you connect you to opportunities around things that matter to you beyond NIL activities. So if you look at your window of opportunity, and remember, your followers will follow you as long as you have a social media account and you are interesting to them, then you don't need to be worried about how it fits into your athletic pursuits.
Well, I know we're coming up on time, so just to close this conversation up, are there any other takeaways that the D3 student athlete should be thinking about, or actionable first steps? I know we've covered a number of them, but just final thoughts from each of you.
Yeah, I can go first here. We've talked a lot about self-auditing that social media and being conscious of what you say. And I think for almost all of the student athletes, that's not really new information. They've heard, growing up with the internet, what you put out there is out there forever, and all those good things. But I'd say it's just really important to not only edit it for, the bad stuff, but just, is it an accurate depiction of who I am, who I want to be? And then most importantly, to, keep things in perspective, and to plan, and to have fun, and to, continue to put just as much importance in the training and eating right and getting your homework done, and the really important things. And if I were a student athlete right now, I don't know, I think like training wise, my bench press and my squat and all that good stuff, that would be, the training and homework and stuff. And then like the bicep curls and the extra add-ons that are really fun, that's going to be my my social media and my NIL, monetizing those fun things. So just to keep things in perspective, and always be learning.
I think my takeaway is the brand building experience is usually perceived or construed as being a selfish experience. Like I only have to talk about myself. I don't like doing that, so I'll never start brand building, right? I think for athletes at high school up should think about it. How can I use this to talk about others? Because social media is not a personal media. It's a social media, right? There's people following you, and then there's who you are. And so if you're able to bridge that gap and understand the people that follow you are looking for certain things from you, that helps you see the bigger picture. And then whenever you think about content, like, oh, I don't want to post the one workout I did, but I would love to hype up a teammate or someone I'm training with about it, do that. That's content. That is branding opportunity, because now I'm walking away thinking, wow, he or she really, loves their teammates, or they seem like a team player. Like that type of thing works just as much. Love up your school, love up your teammates, love up your coaches, love up your fellow students on campus. Like it doesn't have to be about only the self, because it is a social media experience. There are people in this large ecosystem looking at each other for different content. And so if you have that outward perspective as opposed to only being inward, I think you'll be able to think about this in a more effective way, and you'll be a little more motivated because you don't feel like you're stressed about only posting about yourself.
Yep. And these guys are the pros, so they hit on all the great points. I really can't stress the authenticity and staying genuine online. I think that's so important. And it's easy for me to bring up outlier examples, right, of Division III student athletes, or just athletes that have had some crazy opportunities come their way. I don't want to be misleading to think that every Division III student athlete is going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? That just isn't logical. But when I think back to my experience, even if it was, like $20 or $50 or something out of an opportunity, that would have been a pretty sweet date night for my girlfriend, right? Like that would have been great to treat them to something like that. So I think where I want to go with this is it isn't about any life-changing amount of money that could come your way through this. I think there will be athletes. I really do believe that will happen at the Division III level. But what Division III student athletes should be doing right now is seeing how this plays into their future. Like Chris said, this is setting up careers after sports. This is setting up, your entire professional career in a sense. You could see student athletes going into marketing careers or positions around the entrepreneurial space simply because this passion they had in college that may or may not have even been in social media has started to grow into a serious job opportunity for them. So keeping that in mind, and staying genuine to what you're passionate about would be my parting thoughts. And as Opendorse, we'd love to be a resource as well too for questions or just education or guidance along the way.
Definitely, and we'll keep sharing what you guys are putting out, because like I said, I think it's the quality of information that initially caught my eye, and I had spoken to Braley previously, but I was looking to learn more about NIL and to educate myself as I try to pass that information along to current and prospective student athletes. And so we'll definitely keep pushing what you guys are putting out, because it's good stuff. And Yeah. Thanks for coming on and sharing it beyond just the materials online and